you know, the grandkids running around and dogs barking and all the other stuff that you don't necessarily want. But, you know, to be able to sit there and go, oh yeah, over here is where, you know, and you know that road that we just came up, and, you know, so it just opens people up. It's, you know, second best would be to show photos, and then people will respond and stuff. But I'll tell you, there's something different. The smells, the feels, the, you know, of actually being at a place that, you know, they grew up in. You'll see, we've actually got this on film downstairs. And, yeah. So there's Charlie. Now, Charlie grew up at Pukikoni Dairy, which is up Mana Road. It's just a ruin now. And there's Nicole. It was part of her project was to do the history of, you know, Pukikoni Dairy and to, you know, this was when you were still an undergrad, so back ways. And so he's, you know, he's right there. You know, this is where we used to bring the cows through, and we did this and we did that, and the, you know, the boys lived up there, and his father was the manager up there. So just full of stories, and stories of, I think he was like 5 or 6 when somebody played a trick on him, and he was riding his horse, and they jumped off the back, and the horse just went crazy and took off with poor little Charlie on the back. But all those memories coming up, you know, that he wouldn't have told that story in the downstairs, you know, when we were trying to, he needed to see that road and, you know, feel all of that to really come alive. So we're putting the subtitles on his stuff now. And that's that's the old kind of ice house where they used to keep the melt cold and stuff. So there's still ruins. And a very interesting thing, because there's something that some people have called plantation mentality and all of that, where you don't kind of question. Oh, well, the plantation said, yeah, we should do this, so we should do it. You know, it's this kind of, and at Parker Ranch, you had the same thing. You know, whatever Richard Smart, who was the owner, said, or whatever, you know, the manager said at the time, that is how it was. And believe me, it was very much a company town. I mean, to the point of A.W. Carter, who was manager for a long time, did not want the cowboys drinking. So he, you know, was basically a dry town, aside from a little Okole Howe coming up from Waipio. But there was, you know, and he lauded over this. And if he felt a cowboy was drinking too much, and we have a lot of documentation of this, he sent them to Kaneohe, what we always, you know, they always call the crazy house and stuff over there. But that, you know, they would put people with alcohol problems in with, you know, people who had other sorts of problems. And so there's a lot of correspondence back and forth. Please, I'll be good, get me out of here. Yeah, please come back to Parker Ranch. So it's a real interesting little twist in history, but yeah, it's the Parker Ranch. Well, the reason I brought that up is that we said to Charlie, you know, 'cause here's this beautiful ruin on the side of the road. And we said, well, what do you think should be done, you know, to interpret this? I thought, oh, nice little plaque, you know, saying something over there. He just said, oh, whatever the ranch wants to do, you know, and so we were kind of like, it's quite a little. So we'll see. Hopefully Parker Ranch will realize what treasures they have. None of their buildings are on the historic register. So. And there he is. This is at Mana, the original Parker home. There's still remnants of that up there as well, and the old graveyard and stuff. And there's this is up at Makahalau. Of course, every time you do these things, you got to eat, right? And this is something that's been a real quandary. We meet down in the archives. And so I have all the cowboys down there. We got to have food. You shouldn't have food in an archives, right? So it's tricky. So, you know, we always try to make sure we clean it up, and we have a guy that comes and sprays, which I don't like, but he comes about every 2 weeks. And so, you know, knock on wood, we haven't had a problem. But sometimes you've got to tweak it a little. And in my dissertation, I started the whole thing out with a story. I had done a Maori exhibit at Bishop Museum, and Pocky Harrison came over as part of the team to kind of demonstrate while the exhibit was up. He's a master carver and considered a cultural treasure. And so there were pieces that we couldn't put on exhibit. Either we had too many, or they were too sexually explicit, to tell you the truth, as Maori culture carvings can be. And there you're mediating. You're making a choice there, When you're doing an exhibit, you're saying, I might have some problems with that piece. But anyway, he wanted to see what we had in the back room. So I'm there with my gloves on and holding his gloves, and we walk into the back rooms, and I'm showing him all this stuff, and he's sitting there, and he's looking at these popo, these interior house panels, and he's rubbing them with his hands, and he's going, yeah, this is Papa, and this is Rangi, and this is, and he's telling me all the stories, but his hands are all over this. He doesn't have gloves on. And I'm sitting there with the gloves, and I sit them in my pocket. Because what would that be for me to suddenly go, excuse me, you gotta put these on. So there are times you just gotta take off that archival hat. Just, for one thing, his words and his touch is putting mana into that piece. So, you're blocking the mana by, making him wear gloves, basically. Does that make sense? Probably not, yes. But that's how I think. Next. Oh, there are the boys. Go ahead. That's Makaho'au too.
Next.
But you can see, yes, please. But you can see how much they enjoy it, They're getting, and it's not like you're doing it because you're, I don't know how to explain this. It's not like you're taking them up there because, I don't know how to put it. It's like you're acknowledging that their work and their lives matter, basically. This was the first exhibit we did, and this was weird, but when I first came on board, I got a very diverse group of people from the community and some academic types, like Cheryl Ramos, whose family is the Banshee family and all. And Peter Mills, of course, and on my advisory committee. So I will come with ideas of what I want to do exhibit-wise, or or what some of us talk about would be neat to do. And then they say yay or nay. They're the ones, in fact, Val Poindexter's the one that said, I want you to do Waipio Valley. I went, ah! Because it's so heavy to do. It's such a responsibility, and I'll talk more about that when we actually look at the exhibit. But this, the first exhibit they wanted me to do was Peace Corps in Hawaii. And yeah, it's important, and it is an incredible story. But as I started thinking about it, I thought, okay, wait a minute. They did training down in Waipio, and so what I wanted to do was to highlight the local guys that were training these people down in the valley. Clarence Mafuchu, Polo Halaniho, all those guys. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. And there's a little section on them in the Waipio exhibit too. And then I also wanted to look at people in our community who had been in the Peace Corps. Where did they serve? What did they do? And it ended up being just a really fun exhibit, because everybody, of course, brought things back from Africa, from South America, from all over. And so we did this. We had this big map on the wall, and we had strings that came out from different countries, and then the face of, like one of the Andrade girls worked in South America, and, so you can show this, these experiences that these people had, and also show the artifacts. And then we did the whole thing on the training. And this was the 50th anniversary of the Peace Corps, of the starting of the Peace Corps. So this is a gal who found herself in a picture. She was here for the reunion. She had trained down in Waipio, and so she found herself in the photos. And This is a couple from our community who worked in Micronesia, and they brought back fans and things like that. And so, and you can see the map in the background that I was talking about. So it's always to kind of, I don't know how to explain it. My philosophy with the changing exhibit gallery is I want that to be a gallery where people come in and from what I heard, I was moving last night, but from what I heard, people were saying, oh, you gotta come in here, there's Auntie so-and-so's picture. I want that to be, there's Auntie, there's Uncle, there's Grandma, you know, it's gotta be a room where, you know, it's recognizable that, you know, these are not people from way in the past that, you know, like Rickard or something that nobody actually knew, but people can really relate and again feel like, wow, my family's being honored, you know. And this is, as I was saying earlier, I was telling Mina this, we repaint every time we do something in the gallery, and that's because I want it to be so different that when somebody comes in, they're not going to go, oh, I already saw this, and turn around and go out. I want them to go, ooh, purple walls. and don't believe the whole it's got to be white walls. It doesn't. In an art gallery, yes, and you know, for a lot of you know, artwork, but I think you can really play with colors. The color that we did, the gallery that we'll go down and see in a minute, if I would stop talking, is what I call Waipio green. Because it was just a color that I thought, this is the color, this is the color. Hi, aloha. And so this was the music exhibit. It was just called Honoka Loves